Oh, well. They won't fit me, so they don't fit. Thank you anyway. Yeah. Can you hear it? Okay. Talk. I think we're better now. Okay. Well, happy 250 America. Yeah, we have come a long way since the founding of the country. But we're not going to talk too much about George Washington and Franklin and Jefferson because I see the country was actually founded much earlier. Can you imagine taking this voyage? Some people describe the Mayflower as being not much bigger than a city bus as far as room. It was an incredibly stormy voyage. Can you imagine being below deck, not being able to see a thing, and you're bobbing around like a cork in those angry seas? Just think. People have got much more fortitude than we have today. But they were inspired. They went through a lot of trouble. Their their situation was not tenable. They didn't own their land. They worked for the governor. They worked for the Lord. Everything they produced went to him. And if they were lucky, they had a little patch they could work after hours. But yes, the 1600s were when the people crossed the water and landed and put up a fort. So yeah, it was horrific. There's bloodshed all the time, religious fighting, invasion. Listen to these things because they're going to parallel what we're looking at today. Invasion, inquisition, and feudalistic oppression. Let's go to the Muslims. We're going to get to the nice stuff, but let's talk about why they left. So, this caliphate started in 711 to take over the Iberian Peninsula. And they were up into Europe as well. It wasn't just Spain. So, by the 1600s, all those years passed under Muslim authority. 1600s. They expelled the Muslims forcibly through ports on the Mediterranean. Good thing. They're at it again today. Not so much here because of the vastness of our country and the numerous amount of people, but they are taking over Great Britain. They are taking over Ireland, and they've got a big foothold in the rest of Western Europe. Also, Protestant Reformation and the Counter-Reformation. Think of the vacuum that was present in the power structure of that area at that time. It's a recipe for complete chaos. So this is what these people had lived through. So there's a promised land. The New World was a refuge, and particularly we were. There's never been a country that allowed so much, accepted so many different things, different people, different cultures, and peaceably did so than the US of A. Here's the founding, I believe. You can take it or leave it. On May 4th, 1607, they landed and founded James Fort, which was the prerequisite of Jamestown. That ill-fated time where they had struggled. We just saw the crossing of the Red Sea and how there was so much devastation, so much death, so much fighting, so much corruption. It's a military installation, right? This is when, for the first time, a permanent British settlement took place over here. So on September 16th, 1620, we saw the Mayflower set sail for the New World. After setting sail from Plymouth, England, a stormy journey marked by being thrown off course. Miscalculations. Can you imagine, though, trying to keep that ship going straight through all that? So they were off course, and after 66 days at sea, they landed. Really, really glad to be on terra firma. Praise Yah, we made it. How did we ever make it? So the Pilgrim's Trial began with their voyage on the Mayflower, a 65-day journal from this reference. 102 men and women, children crossed the stormy Atlantic in a space the size of a city bus. Following that came a cruel New England winter for which they were ill prepared. We know that old story. There's a document called the Mayflower Compact, which I don't know how many people know that of the existence of that. It proves that this was a solemn religious voyage. It was meant to, as we will see, we will see that it was centered around Yeshua. Now, this is what's really cool about us here, because they set up their organization like we did this one. We don't have the big hierarchy where you have to have an appointment to see the pastor. This is the way they set it up. Everybody has their job. The Pilgrims chose as leaders those who diligently promote the common good and do not begrudge in them the ordinariness of their persons. In other words, if you were not necessarily of a high society, you were still okay. You're still even with the rest of them. But God's ordinances for your own good. Where else do we see that? Deuteronomy. Thou shalt keep therefore his statutes and his commandments, which I command thee this day, that it may go well with you, for your own good. Here's an excerpt from that document. In the name of God, amen, we whose names are underwritten, loyal subjects of our dread sovereign, Lord King James, of the King James Bible. Now he's of this settlement, and he's done so many magnificent things, but yet he's been besmirched in a lot of the modern histories. By the grace of God of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, defender of the faith, and it's so on and so forth, having undertaken for the glory of God and advancement of the Christian faith. That's why they did this, okay? Because they couldn't do it back in Europe. So, is a grand cycle coming to a close? I hope that these small breadcrumbs will lead us back to our people. I hope these small, delicate references bring us to the house of Israel. Redemption and the promised land involved a water crossing. They didn't get, we had to go through the Red Sea. We had to cross the Jordan River. But the bigger scale, which we are now part of, cross the Atlantic Ocean. But is there another crossing that we have yet to look for? Which has not happened. But the pattern shows that it has, that we can look for that. Perhaps, this thought came to me, so for what it's worth. Perhaps we can see Independence Day as a day of deliverance, free to believe, speak, worship according to the truth for the time being, right now, having left behind the violence of popes and kings and pharaohs, having crossed the raging sea. Oh, I hate this clicker. Having crossed the raging sea into the unknown. These people didn't know what they were in for. They took a leap of faith and a very, very dangerous trip. It is all unraveling now. Every single demon from the pit of hell is trying to bring us down spiritually, morally, financially. And there's no more west in which to flee, right? So there must be another place. Here's today's version of those things that we talked about in the first part. Corporate spying and coercion. That is the feudalistic control over the people. Manipulation against all good sense and morality. We see riots, burning, looting, smashing, slashing, murders. While government looks the other way, invasion of diametrically opposed Muslims infiltrating the pillars of our society. We're seeing all that, and they were seeing it back then, before this voyage over to America. The 1600s. Very important. The Muslims were expelled from Spain in that century. And of course, the Mayflower. The Counter-Reformation ended that bloody, awful period. Sabbath was kept in the New World. New World colonies were organized. In other words, they were bringing this thing into a viable, large enterprise. It was no longer a little fort. We've heard of this before, haven't we? So, times isn't really a day or a week or a month or a year or a century. It's a unit of time. Can be any one of those. So let's see. A set time, a proper time, an occasion. Times. So it's interesting that if we see 3.5 as centuries, we are solidly in the 1600s. Is our wilderness journey coming to an end? Because this country was wilderness. It was open. There were people here, of course. And there were settlements here, and there were little cities and big cities here. But if we go to 2026, we take 3.5 units of time, and we'll call them centuries. So that's 350 years equals 1776. So take 350 out of 2026, and that's what you get. Then we add back another unit of time, and we come to 1776. I thought it was interesting. I told you I'm not a math person, but when I saw 1676, it should have been automatic for some people that are smarter than me. But that seemed like a really close proximity to 1776. Here's a discussion by a professor from an East Coast university. He says, and this has happened, this is on the way right now. In 1676, the relationship between the adolescent colonies, the imperial government in London, and the embattled Algonquin and Iroquois Indians. So they had wars going on with the Indians at that time. Now the political institutions that evolved in the colonies in the next 300 years reflect this experience. So we're living some of this stuff now. Some of the influences of this. 1676 was a cataclysmic year. What do we have today in the country? We have extreme racial tensions, talk of civil war, and we are losing our autonomy to the global government. So that's what's happening. That was happening back then, and that's what we've got coming in today. Let's look at this. The woman, Israel. We're given 2 wings of a great eagle. Well, they did not fly. That she might fly into the wilderness, into her place. That's a figure. Where she is nourished for that times and a half a time from the face of the serpent. So when they crossed over, Yahweh said, "Did I not bear you up on eagle's wings? Have ye seen what I did unto the Egyptians, and how I bare you on eagle's wings, and brought you unto myself at Mount Sinai?" The woman was and is bountifully provided for, protected by great oceans. We have the best cropland in the world. We have copious amounts of fresh water, which is critically important, and not many people take that into consideration. But it is going to be an issue for us. And great beauty that we as a people have enjoyed by the hand of Yah. The wilderness we call the United States of America. So, we had the ocean crossing, we had the water crossing, right? There's one check. Establishment of the commandments, which has been dusted under the rug. And we have no more west in which to flee. We are at the end. We are used up. The President of the United States just declared a national emergency over fertilizer. I don't know if you guys saw that. Because next year's crop is going to be in trouble if something isn't done. Because you can't grow anything out there now. You have to have these chemicals. So the land is really just a medium for the roots. And they take up water, so that's part of it. But we're setting at the end of this matter. Anyway, that's what I was given about this. It's time to become, thoughtful of this being the last days in this country. They say your typical empire only lasts 100 or 250 years, and that is where we're at. Not to say it's going to shut down tomorrow, but all the pieces are in place to do so. You just have to go to a source that's not standard, news media, and do some investigating on your own to find out what crises and what dangers that Yah will protect us from. Amen. Amen.